He knows that I love him. He knows that I'm not going anywhere and that we're going to trudge through this arm in arm together.
He will bounce back from this, there's no doubt in my mind. And I said, Kenny, that piece of leg is such a tiny piece of who you are.
That they can live through that and still come out with a smile on their faces like they do. It's unbelievable. That's what makes them heroes to me.
I was Sergeant First Class Jeffrey Mittman, and I was hurt in Baghdad, Iraq on 7 July 2005. It's 10 months later now, and I'm currently undergoing long medical procedures to rebuild my face.
That one still needs a tag.
There was no real military background, no push for me to join. Gave me an opportunity to serve the country, pay for school and everything. And then once I got in the military, I found out, hey, this is great. You know, I really love it. And, you know, here I am 17 years later. I got into all my deployments knowing that there could be a price to pay for what I'm doing.
The phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. I figured it was him calling just to say hey, and it was the Department of the Army.
Have a good trip back.
The only thing that they could tell me was that he was classified as a VSI, which is very seriously injured, and that he had major facial trauma and a right hand injury. You break down. You just sit there and cry. That's all you can do. Okay, got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have been attacked by an improvised explosive device on the side of the road. Just happened to be driving that day, and when it fired, it came through the driver's side window and came across, and the explosion obviously blinded me and caused my facial injuries and my injuries to my extremities. And then the next thing I recall is waking up in Walter Reed. And
Okay, put your arm out. There you go.
the first thing I saw was my wife standing there. She was, you know, right in front of my face, so I could tell who it was. You know, it's the first time I realized that Christy's here and I'm in the hospital. You sit there and you go, well, gosh, you know, I guess she really does love me after 13 years. Not that I didn't think that beforehand, but, you know, it's like kicking you in the crotch. That, you know, my God, she's staying by me through everything. So I think at that point, it really dawned on me that you got lucky, so.
They started to bring him out of sedation, and he still had the trach in. So it was difficult at best for him to try to say one or two words. But the first thing he told me was, "I'd love you." That's why I stay. I love him. I couldn't imagine leaving. How would I explain that to my children? I'm sorry, Mommy couldn't deal with what happened to your dad, so it's just easier for me to leave. What does that teach them?
The hardest part of the disability to me is really the eyesight. I can no longer drive. I can only see peripherally out of the right eye. So I have to kind of scan left to right with, like, you know, what half an eye I do have. I'm not sure it's not easier on her. I know it's not. I really believe me being injured is, you know, harder on her than it is on me. Well, I traveled between Indianapolis and Washington, D.C. While in D.C. at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, I undergo my medical treatments. While I'm in Washington, D.C. with my wife, my in-laws take over the parenting duties of my two children.
Thank you. You're going to go uphill. Uphill. Downhill. Okay, now we're good.
Once the doctors feel I'm ready, I'm allowed to return home to Indianapolis, where my children live.
Say hi, Daddy.
Give Daddy a smooch. Give him a smooch.
This is the first photo that I have of Jeff when I first met him. In soft tissue terms, he's missing most of his upper lip, nearly his entire nose, and then his orbit soft tissues and eye socket soft tissues have been displaced to the side. So now This is how he looks at this point. This is tissue taken from his arm. He has, there's an area here that we removed some soft tissue with a little bit of the radius bone attached to it. Left it attached to the blood vessels that supply this area, and then brought it up to the face and sutured it into the facial artery and vein. It's not exactly the same type of tissue, obviously, but it's a starting point. And so we left the flap big so that we have things to work with for the nasal reconstruction. It is a very difficult injury. I think Jeff presents one of the most complex injuries that I've seen in reconstructive work.
Matt and Isaac are on the long road to recovery, but my son Kenny is still in the intensive care unit in critical condition. When Kenny first came home and told me he was going to join the Marines, I was just floored. And he just said, "Mom, I don't want to work all week and then be miserable like everyone I work with. I want to see the world. I want a different life." I never imagined he'd get injured. I thought about his funeral and I thought about what I would do and how I would handle it, but I never thought about him getting hurt.
I heard he blew off a piece of his leg from his knee down.
And also a piece of his jaw had actually.
Yeah, his jaw's all splotchy, like right here. His mouth's wired shut, so he can't open his mouth.
You know, he got it worse than all of us, you know. And I almost got flown off the LAV. And I got shrapnel right here on this left side. Actually, and I got some right here, actually. A little bit right here and here on the left arm.